front page of the Star. Hallelujah, we saved our jobs. Strippers tell counsellors as a feminist I completely reject the notion that we are exploited. I have to say, I was surprised at the Spearmint Rhino. The news that they kept their licence. Well, fair enough. They've obviously done enough to convince the council that they've done a good job and they're going to change things. But what have they got to do? I mean, there were lots of things went off in there, weren't there? I mean, obviously that's the point of it, but more things went off than should have done. We're going to be speaking about that later on, without trying to get into trouble. We've also got other stuff for you. So the news this morning in Sheffield, of course, is that the lap dancing club next to the, pretty much next door to the student union for Sheffield Hallam University, Spearmint Rhino, has had its licence renewed for another 7 months, despite controversy over breaches that have been made. Covert filming revealed that some dancers were acting inappropriately and revealed that other regulations had been broken, leading to campaigners trying to get it to close. Staff working there were against the move, obviously. They said it should stay open. Adam Smith has been to hear what the people of the city centre have had to say.
People have to work, they have to make a living, they have to spend money somewhere. It brings money into the city somewhere along the way. I don't agree with what they do, but they have a living to make.
They're not hurting anybody, they're only earning a living.
Your message to Sheffield City Council would be?
What are you playing at? If you've got kind of a clear licence and rules as part of that licensing agreement, if any organisation doesn't meet it, then that licence should be terminated.
I think they're wrong in renewing the licence. I think that other things should be taken into account, definitely. And it shouldn't just be given willy-nilly.
If people want to go for those sorts of things, it's up to them. I think maybe placement of them is probably quite important. Having it right next to a university is probably not the best, but I don't think they shouldn't exist.
It's their choice to do what they do, and if they feel proud or they respect themselves for doing it, then I feel like that's okay.
If they've broke the rules and regulations, shut them down or fine them.
This is worse things that happen on the streets and nothing gets done about it, so they're in there earning a living and they're not hurting anybody.
I mean, do you think it exploits women?
No.
Why?
Because they're doing that job to earn a living. If they were exploited, they wouldn't do it.
I can see why it could be exploitative, but then I think women have, we've got a voice and we can make our own opinions, and if that's the way that, they want to make their living, that's fair enough.
I think in some cases, yes, it definitely does, but if these women are wanting to do that, then who's to tell them they can't go and do that?
If they're not pushed into it, they're not forced into it, it's an informed decision that they want to go up against.
Do you think places like this should be closed completely?
I wouldn't say closed completely, because like I say, it allows stuff like that to happen in a controlled environment.
I did have a friend that worked there many years ago, and I mean, all I can see from her point of view is that they didn't exploit her at all. She did it when she was a student to earn some extra cash and didn't find it at all exploitative, but I mean, that was going back a good 10 years.
The management have said they're going to be more robust, they're going to be more strict with their employees. Do you think that's enough?
No, it's still a strip club.
Well, I mean, you have to ask, I suppose, if you are coming from the side of the protesters, what do they have to do to find them in breach? Charlotte Mead is from the Women's Equality Party. She's one of those who was against the venue staying open. Charlotte, good morning.
Morning, Toby.
What do you make to this news?
Well, obviously, we're really, really disappointed. We're really disappointed that the council decided to continue to licence it. It does feel a little bit like a rubber stamping exercise, to be honest, because this year has been different to any other years, because obviously the council's own investigation found that there were 219 breaches of the licence and the Dancers Code of Conduct.
So the council themselves found breaches?
Yeah. So what happened was there was a private investigation where private investigators were sent in. That footage was given to an organisation called Not Buying It, who passed it on to the council, and the council then carried out their own investigation, and that investigation found that there had been 219 breaches of the licence and the Dancers Code of Conduct. So it does beg the question, really, that the whole process that we go through every year, and the legislation that Parliament put in place, which means that local people can have more say in whether they want SEVs, sexual entertainment venues, in their communities and in their towns and cities, And that's one of the reasons that legislation was put in place, so that local people could have more say in whether they wanted them or not. It does kind of undermine all of that, and it does undermine the democratic process. What are we all turning up for each year? And also, what are the dancers bothering to turn up for each year? If none of that is being, if anything that anybody says and anything that happens and any breaches that are found don't mean anything, then the council are effectively just rubber stamping it each year, and there's no point in us going through this rigmarole every year, which costs a huge amount of money, a huge amount of resource. The licensing service at the council have had to put an enormous amount of resource into this in the last 6 months. They were given the footage in April this year, and we've only just had the hearing yesterday. So that's a good 6 months that they've had to work on that. It's been very, very strenuous for them. They've been under a lot of pressure. There's been a huge amount of resource, and this is a council that is already stretched because of austerity. Is this really what we want to spend our council resources on, doing this sort of thing just so a couple of hundred men can watch naked women dancing?
But you see, well, it's not just that, though, is it? And that's the thing, because you have some vindication here, don't you? Because there are a group of people whose viewpoint I understand, who may have heard you in the past, and go, well, look, it is just women dancing. It's lads on stag do's. It's rugby clubs or touring, but they're just dancing, and there's rules in there. Nobody gets touched, nobody gets abused.
But that's the thing. It's not yeah, exactly. It's not just dancing. We found out now it's not just dancing.
It turns out it's not that at all, which actually changes what I think could actually be a reasonable point of view, one that you wouldn't agree with. But actually could change that now. Go, well, actually, no, if young women are being abused like this, then that is something wrong. And if the council have found that they're being abused like this, what's the point of the licensing system if they're not going to change it? Exactly.
And I think that's part of the issue from yesterday. I mean, there was the hearing on Monday. So it was on Monday. The hearing on Monday. The decision was yesterday, but the hearing on Monday, the objectors' side, we heard a lot of evidence from a lot of people, and people with huge amount of expertise. We had Dr. Helen Mott, who came from Bristol, who is a highly experienced expert in the field of research about violence against women, and she gave all sorts of research and evidence about what effect strip clubs have on society in general, and all of that was just completely dismissed as theoretical. By the Spearmint Rhinos barrister. He said this theoretical harm, and it's not difficult to make that understanding that if we as a society and if our council is going to not only endorse men sexualising and objectifying women and the sexual commodification of one sex for another, if they're actually going to endorse that by not only saying it's okay for you to do this, but here we'll put somewhere in the middle of our city centre, right next to our student union, where we'll say that you can come and do it. You can come and do that. We're so okay with that happening that we'll license somewhere. It's the equivalent of us having a Pirelli calendar in the middle of our city. We got rid of those a long time ago in garages and offices.
Well, a Pirelli calendar that does stuff to you.
But we put one right in the middle of our city centre, and we tell men that this is okay. And those men, they go. I cannot believe. I would challenge anybody to think that a man who goes into Spearmint Rhino the next day goes into work and says, right, I must look at whether we've got good sexual harassment processes in place. I must go and check with HR whether our gender pay gap is diminishing. I must go and check that our maternity rights at this company are good for women. I must go and check that we've got equal opportunities for women here and that we're treating everybody equally. Because of course they're not, because they don't leave those views about women in the club, and we are encouraging those views, and we are telling men that those views are okay by having things like strip clubs. And it's not just strip clubs. I'm not trying to pretend that
this isn't a strip club, is it?
Well, it's a strip club, but it's a strip club where there's definitely, now we know, other things going on in there which breach the licence. And the council have basically said, well, you've breached the licence 219 times. And I'd hasten to add that that's 219 times in 2 visits from 2 customers. So, that's not 219 breaches over a 6-month period. That's 219 breaches in 2 nights with contact with 2 customers, dancers with 2 customers.
It must have been like a Roman orgy.
So,
I just can't.
Your words, Toby. Your words.
That amount of breaches in that amount of time.
Yeah.
We can't. You know that we can't talk about what went off in there. But you and I are both adults, and we talked before we came on air. What you described to me, if that's right, is a brothel.
Some would describe it as that. I'm guessing. Yeah. Some could describe it as that. Yeah.
And there are reasons why we don't have. Well, we do have brothels. Atcliffe's got them.
Well, that exactly. That's another extension of it, isn't it? It's another extension of it. But when we allow the some things, it allows the door to open for other things. And when we've got all the issues that we have about gender and sex equality that we still have in 2019, and I still come on the radio every year to talk about this, and I know later on you've got some dancers coming on as well, and every single year we're expected to justify ourselves, the dancers are expected to justify themselves. Nobody ever asks the men who go there to justify their actions, and that's the reason why Spearmint Rhino is here. And my challenge actually to the BBC would be to go and stand outside Spearmint Rhino and interview some men that are going in and ask them why they go there, because the research has shown that men go to strip clubs because they want to get away from what they see as a world where they're not allowed to treat women unequally. They go in there because they don't have to think about treating people equally. They don't have to think about not sexually harassing somebody. They see the outside world as somewhere where they're not allowed to do all those things anymore. And so the reason that they go to strip clubs is because they feel that they can do those things. And we're still saying to them, well, it's okay for you to do that because we're going to license somewhere in the middle of our city centre where you can go and do it.
We are speaking to some of the dancers later on. It's going to be an interesting conversation. They would say, they will say, I'm guessing, and again, there is some sympathy with this view. They shouldn't break the laws. That's why there's a licence there. But if these dancers who come in and say we're not breaking the laws, then they are just earning a living, aren't they? And then it's not their fault because this is there for them to do. They're allowed to do this. I don't have any disagreement with the women that are working there whatsoever. They are making it in the world that we have and in the structures that we have. You can only play the cards you dealt with. The thing that I have a problem with is the fact that we've set up these structures and that we have this culture where this is a way for women to make money. And there's been a lot of arguments about, this is a woman's choice and if it's putting food on the table and all that sort of thing. But I would ask, what kind of society have we created where we say the way for women to get out of poverty is for them to take their clothes off? Men are not expected to take their clothes off and to do that sort of work to get themselves out of poverty, but women are. But women are. Not to the same extent, and we don't have and men don't face sexualization, objectification, discrimination within society in the same way that women do. So that's not an equal playing field anyway. No, it just isn't. That's what I would say about that. But I have no argument with the women that are working there whatsoever. They're making it in the world that we have. But I have disagreement with the world that we've set up, and we need to set up a fairer one and a more equal one. Charlotte, thank you very much indeed. That's Charlotte Mead there from the Women's Equality Party.